Hi, Wes. How you doing?
Chuck, how you doing?
Really good.
Okay.
So, Wes, you know Jarrett from he went to Ann Arbor. He's Canadian, of course.
Yes,
Yes,
of course.
yes, and he was telling me that you were actually the first professional tuba player that you heard first. Jarrett, how does that go?
Yeah, Wes, you were the first tuba player that I ever heard live.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it
incredible.
was it was when I was in high school. My parents for my birthday took me to see the DSO, and you guys were playing Chike Five. I forget
Okay.
who was
Oh,
conducting.
wow.
Probably didn't matter. I mean, you were playing, but it was spectacular, and it's the acoustic and orchestra hall is really great.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of the great
So, Wes,
halls.
before we go through
Um,
your amazing history, tell us what you've been up to most recently.
Well, most recently, as you know, I'm publishing music, and
Right.
I live in northern Michigan. And by the way, you look great. Uh, Many snows have passed since we've spoken.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, but
Well,
go ahead.
well, you're up in Traverse City, right?
I'm near Traverse City. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you
near
become
the.
quite involved, as I recall. You became quite involved in the local scene there. You've been very involved in community outreach and seen to it that the Traverse City flourishes.
Uh, yeah, I have been. I don't know how you knew that actually, but
Well, it wasn't that long ago we saw each other. You were telling me about various things that you'd done, and it was amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I became a board member on the community foundation up
Right.
here, and we had quite a number of successes. It's very gratifying to be able to help out the community and the people in the community.
Right.
I was on there for 9 years, but then there are term limits, so I'm now off of the board. And So I'm busy with music publishing and working around the house. And of course, right now with the pandemic going on, there's really
Right.
not a
Working around
lot
the
to do.
house.
I look out
Okay,
this
Wes.
window, then that window.
Wes, before you joined, Jarrett and I were talking about. We have decided that you're going to be the most interesting guest we're ever going to talk to. Your your background is absolutely sensational. Why don't you start at the beginning? You were a teenager, I think, already hitting great success.
Well, yeah, when I went to college, that was when I got sort of involved in like a bifurcated music situation. I was involved in classical music, I was involved in band music, and I was involved in popular music with Richard and Karen Carpenter. So we I wasn't sure at that point exactly
You might want to say that again. Something about carpenters.
yeah. Well, people our age know who that is. I don't know if the young people know that, that
They'll look it up. They'll look it up. Tell them what you
I do.
did.
Speaking for all young people, I know who the Carpenters are. So. But
You were playing
yeah.
bass for the Carpenters, right?
Pardon me?
You're playing bass for the Carpenters.
I was playing bass, and then I was playing tuba around the Los Angeles area, and it was a decision between the instruments. And actually, I was a better tuba player than bass player. Uh, Richard and I worked very well together because we just thought of music the same way. We were really aligned musically. But technically, as a bass player, I really wasn't as good as some other bass players in town at that time. And of course, since that time, bass playing has become much better. So probably was a good thing I went in the other direction.
But that's quite a start. I mean, starting out with a very popular group. I mean, recording and you're doing all that before you're out of college, right?
Yeah, yeah. Richard and I met, oh, I guess it was my first year of college. We met in music theory class. And neither of us were doing work, of course.
Right.
We were mostly like trying to stay away. I shouldn't say that, but
So how many of their songs? How many recordings were you on with the Carpenters?
I can't give you a number. It was a handful of the early ones. I played also with them in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe and things like that. But that kind of blended into the time when I went to Detroit in 1970. So that a lot of things were going on at the same time. We started with the Carpenters in early 1965, and I was really busy with them, but I was still pursuing tuba a lot at Long Beach State College. I went to the Music Academy of the West, studied with a great trombone player there, Dennis Smith, who later was, you know, Dennis. Yeah, he was the principal trombone in the Detroit Symphony when I was hired there a few years
And
later.
a character and a half.
Yeah, and a half.
Take a second here. There's a great story. Tell me if this is true. When he left the symphony, he bought a farm, and he put out his mailbox, and he put his name on it, Dick Smith. And his neighbor came and was really angry with him. How dare he? That was his name. His neighbor turned out to be Dick Smith.
I never heard that. Oh my. Well, in Los Angeles, I was studying primarily with Tommy Johnson, but also with Roger Bobo.
Great.
And then now here's a strange thing. Only a kid would do this. I auditioned for San Francisco Opera for the 1967, I think it was 67, yeah. And I won the audition, and then I turned it down. Yeah, there's a laugh. I turned it down to go to Julliard. And I clearly remember when I was telling the general director at San Francisco, his name was Kurt Herbert Adler, and I told him that I was thinking about not actually taking the job, and he asked me, so what is the problem? Is it money? Is it, you know, what? I said, no, actually, I think I've decided I'm going to go to Julliard. And he looked at me like I was insane.
Right.
And he said, I can't do the accent, you know, the German accent, but he said, you know, he said, this orchestra is why you go to Julliard.
Right.
But I didn't listen. And so I went to Julliard, but then after a year at Julliard, I decided that maybe that wasn't the best choice long term. So I actually called back. I called San Francisco, got on my
things. You're moving along here too fast because there's some fascinating things here. First of all, were you going to follow Ron Bishop in San Francisco? Was that about the time, roughly?
Roughly, yeah. They made the trade in San Francisco. Ron it was like a baseball team.
Right.
Ron went to Cleveland, and it was F. Chester Roberts, I think, went.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He went to the symphony, but not the opera. So the opera was, you know, just becoming a really separate job, and so I got that.
Okay, now you got to tell us about your audition when you get to Julliard, and they're going to place you in an orchestra or a band or something, and you go in for your audition.
You have an excellent memory.
Oh, this is remarkable. Everybody's got to know this story.
Chuck, you have to write his book. Like, you know way more about him than he does.
I could write a book and 3 people would read it, you know, and 2 of them are on this Zoom call. But I'd already been accepted at Julliard, but you had to be placed into one of the, I think, 4 orchestras at the time. And the director, the main conductor there was Gene Morel. I didn't know anything. In fact, that's a good sentence. I didn't know anything. But Morel was not only had a great renown as a conductor, but also he had an unbelievable ear. I mean, I didn't know this, but he really had an incredible musical ear. And I was waiting to go in for the audition, and some girl, a clarinet player, I think it was, had came out having just auditioned for him, and she was in tears. And immediately I thought, this doesn't look good. This can't be good. So I went in and I sat down with my tuba, and Morel was there. He had a little cigar hanging out of his mouth, and I asked him. I was nervous, of course, and so I asked him, "Do you mind if I play, a couple of notes, just to warm up a little bit. He said, fine, that's fine. So I played a couple of fancy lip slurs, and then I hit a pedal C, just whapped it. And his eyes opened up immediately, and he looked at me and he said, oh, this is a very low note. What is this note? And I said, well, it's a low C. And he said, but I hear a C sharp. And I said, what? I said, no, I played a low C. There was a low C. And he said, well, clearly it's, I hear the C sharp. And I said something like, well, no, I know it was a C because I didn't finger anything. It's open. It's a pedal tone, of the instrument. He says, clearly I hear the C sharp. And then I made the big mistake. I said, well, sometimes hearing those low notes can be kind of tricky. And as the words were coming out of my mouth, I knew it was not good. And then he screamed at me, and he yells, he says, "It is a C sharp! It is a C sharp!" And I didn't know what to do. So the only thing I could do at that point was say, well, I guess, maybe I could have been a C sharp. Maybe I was sharp because I was nervous or something, And then he put this music in front of me to play. It wasn't tuba music. I think it was like a bassoon thing or something. And I played a little bit of it. And while I was playing, he lifted the music from the stand. And he said, first you say it was a C, then you say it was a C sharp. You don't even know the notes you're playing. Get out. But he put me in the first orchestra. I walked out of there and I thought, I just wanted to look at my airplane ticket to make sure it was a round trip, because it was down the drain.
What an amazing audition. So he had a good sense of humor, no doubt.
But
he probably knew you'd already been accepted to San Francisco and wondered why you're there in the first place.
I don't know. I think he was messing with everybody all day. He was just having a good time.
So you only spent a very short time at Julliard.
Yeah, 1 year. And that was a year, by the way, that I think Ron Ram was there.
I was going to ask if you knew Ronnie in LA, but yeah.
Well, I didn't really, I can't say that I really knew him, but I did play with him once in Los Angeles with the LA Brass Society with Mr. Remsen.
Yeah.
And then that concert, that was the only time that I actually performed next to Tommy Johnson also.
Oh, okay. Because Ronnie also had a close relationship with Tommy Johnson through those years. And then, so now you meet up at Julliard. That's interesting.
Yeah. So 1 year there, and then back to, I talked my way back into San Francisco Opera. And I spent 2 years there and then auditioned for Detroit in 1970 and moved to Detroit.
Who was conducting at that time? Was it the famous conductor that made so many recordings with Detroit?
Oh, no, you're thinking of Jarvi?
No, who was there when you joined?
Sixten Ehrling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ehrling. He was an interesting fellow.
So now, so you're in Detroit, and I think I met you roughly, probably a few years into that. I was driving through and we got together and we spent some time. Now, what fascinated me was not only that you were a wonderful tuba player and playing in a major symphony orchestra, but you were very interested in the stock market at the time.
Yes.
You showed me what you were doing, and I should have been much more alert what you were doing. You were following the Bernoulli principle.
Yeah.
Of always centered and measured, and that you could show that for hundreds of years of stock market that it has a certain pattern based on the Bernoulli. Now you must have been doing that when the stock market was probably around 1200.
Yeah, or even below that maybe. Yeah.
Right. So yes, I should have been more alert to what you were doing.
No, what I was doing worked well for me at that time. Mm-hmm. But as everything changes and everything gets more sophisticated, it wouldn't work now. That's gone. Those days are gone.
You had a wonderful interest in, I'd say, well, I guess business at the same time you're playing your instrument, which led to a very kind of a fascinating, and this can happen to people in orchestras. You get picked to be on boards, and you became a member of the, correct me if I'm wrong, you became a member of the pension, or
Yes.
you were the musician appointed to the pension committee.
Yeah, actually, there were three musicians and three from the symphony board that ran the pension committee. I was on there for, I think, about 27 years, actually.
Wow.
And I became the chairman for the last, I was the chairman of the pension trustees for the last about 10 years.
Well, that said a lot there. These are businessmen deciding that you could actually take control.
Well, control, yeah, in a sense, yeah. I mean, you're managing the meetings. You do have some control,
Right,
but you're not
right.
controlling everything. In fact, on pensions, you try to make it look like you're not controlling it.
Right. So you went through a couple bad downturns, the economy downturns, and I think that you had a pretty good track record during those downturns.
Yes, we did. We did. We were disciplined, and you know, investing for a pension is a lot different than
Right.
other things. In fact,
Well, let me guess. Then your colleagues in the orchestra probably loved you for that. You became their best friend. That you'd saved them from. Is this accurate?
Well, I wouldn't say I saved them. No, that would be overstating. But I think I was, in a sense, I was popular, yeah, for having a hand in the pension.
Right.
A steady hand on the tiller, I guess.
Right. Because that doesn't usually come from the musician. The musicians are usually there just to report back that everything's going along fine. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But to actually be, and on the outside watching that happen, it was intriguing that businessmen would say, wow, this guy has the abilities and the, that this is fine. So there you were, both a businessman, and I'm sure you thought that way too. You're a musician and a businessman.
Yeah.
When did you start your publishing company, Encore Music?
I started it, I think, in 1985. And that was actually too early because the technology wasn't yet ready. I could see it was coming, but it was in too much of a crude format at that time.
Right.
So a lot of things had to be redone over the years to make them, look better.
Right. Yeah. So Jarrett, about when did you actually hear Wes? It would have been quite a bit later, right? Like in the 2000s already.
Yeah, I think you were. So when did you leave the orchestra, Wes?
I left the orchestra in 2008.
Oh, okay. So you were there for the strike then?
Let me think. Now.
2005 was it?
Well, I always have to say which strike. I was there for 3 of them, but I don't think I was there. I think that happened right after I left the final one. The 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you? I mean, you weren't there, but can you talk about that at all? I mean, that was for me, like from an onlooker wanting to pursue this orchestral career, was one of the first times that I was kind of like, whoa, this is crazy.
Well, I would be talking. Yeah, I can, but I'm talking also as an outsider looking in.
Sure.
Because I had left the orchestra at that time, but there were still some. I would say institutional problems of relations between the musicians union and the board of the symphony. I mean, it was worse in previous years, and it had improved a lot, but it wasn't right. And then there were obvious financial problems in 2008. That was the time of the big collapse, the economic collapse. So there were a lot of forces that were moving together toward this, pardon me. And the musicians were not ready to compromise, and the board was not ready to compromise. So it ended up in that situation, which was unfortunate. But with the advantage of hindsight, after 12 years or whatever it's been, 12 years, yeah. Actually, there were improvements, a lot of improvements. The symphony board and the musicians and the union actually get along well now. They work well together.
Right.
It's actually totally different than it was when I was in the orchestra, really. And it's a much better and a much healthier situation now.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy for me to see how many members of the orchestra were leaving at that point, because they were just like, it was something like 50%, right? The entire percussion section.
It was a lot, yeah, a lot. I mean, some people were near retirement anyway, but then the concertmaster left. Yeah, it was a mess.
Wow,
it was a big mess.
Yeah, growing up, so I grew up in Windsor, which is like sort of, I considered it like a suburb of Detroit because it's so close and it's so influenced by Detroit culture. What was your time like in Detroit? I'm curious, because I always saw it as like a place where, the art scene was really vibrant for a while, despite the fact that there was, economically you could see the gears turning of something possibly bad happening, which resulted in the city declaring bankruptcy not too long ago.
Yeah. Detroit is complex. It always has been. In the early years when I was in the orchestra, it was a great orchestra, but the funding and the operations were the funding was not broad-based. Everything was the automotive industry, and the automotive industry is cyclical,
right?
And so that therefore the orchestra was cyclical, and plus there was the antagonism between the musicians and the board that was ongoing, especially in the early years. So it was kind of a mixed up thing, really. The one constant was that the orchestra was really good.
Right. Talk a little bit about relationship. My sense has been very often that orchestras, just maybe this happens in a lot of businesses, but they decide the management is not working in their best interest, that they're on their own and not working. Yet it's the management that's out raising the money to keep the orchestra going.
I know.
And how does that, why does that develop? Why do musicians start feeling like they're being hard done by when they've got a contract in their hand and people out saying, hey, these are wonderful musicians, give us some help, some support?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know that I can answer that, but someone has an understanding of it, I think, because if I look at the years when I was in the Detroit Symphony, that was the feeling. That was exactly the feeling that was going on. But that changed. I mean, if you look at it now, I don't think people feel that way.
That's great.
They think the management is working hard and doing a good job, and the board gives millions of dollars to run the symphony, and that's fantastic. And I think there's a more appreciation. But what may have played into that was just communication. When in the early years in Detroit, there was zero communication between musicians and the board of directors. Zero. So they could have been on another planet, and it's not that way now. Now they're all mixed up. They're working together and they're making the thing work, and it's really beautiful in that way.
There was a kind of a correlative thing I saw that it was the University of Toronto was a little different. At the time, the chairman of the board was someone that was very involved with music. In fact, had been involved with orchestras and seen that, but was running the University of Toronto. It was Marnie Pakin, actually, was running the board. And there was a time when they had big budget cuts. So they had every department, from the history to the legal and the music, they all had to come and make their presentation and say, we need, don't cut our budget, we need your money. So she said she fully expected to show up and have a brass group playing when they walked in the door, and up in the hall would be a string quartet. And as they're trying to get in, there's a flute player in the corner. And they would be saying, don't cut the budget, don't cut our budget. We're musicians, we need this help. Instead, apparently the presentation was, first of all, there's no music. And the fellow making the presentation came in and said, please don't cut our budget, because then we won't have anybody to come in and clean the halls on weekends and change the light bulbs. And so I suppose they cut the budget. But talk about not communicating and not being involved together. Like easier. So I had a similar idea because I remember the Detroit strike very well, because we were actually supposed to play with the orchestra a few weeks into that strike.
Yes.
So we got a call from the musicians and said, would you please support us, call the union, tell them that, get in there and get us some more money. So it gave me an opportunity to try it. I'll try it out on you. Gave me an opportunity to say, well, why don't you do something a little different? Because what are you actually looking for? Well, more money. I said, well, you're in the middle of Detroit where poverty abounds, and you're going to go out with a sign saying, give us more money. Why don't you instead send somebody out with a trumpet or a clarinet and a big sign that says, we demand to play more Mahler, or do something that has some relation to the orchestra, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was Midori, the violinist, that was next slated to come up, and they had to cut her concert. And I said, what would have been better than just turning her away? Why don't you put her up on the roof where people going to work at 8:30 in the morning can see her and get you guys lined up and have her play there and amplify it. Like, it just seems so uncreative to go out and say, give us more money.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to get excited about that?
Yeah, almost nowhere, and especially in Detroit during a gigantic collapse and recession.
Right. It just seemed to me, so I'm glad to hear things have improved, because I think that's old think. And boy, orchestras particularly need to really reconsider their relationship to their communities and how they go and relate.
Well, that's another thing.
So now you moved to Traverse City, and I bet first thing is you made, you're probably close friends now with Michael Moore. Is that true?
I know Michael Moore.
Yeah, because he has a large involvement. I think he's been, I think you told me he was instrumental in renovating or renewing the downtown Traverse City. In various respects. Right. In fact, the State Theater right downtown, an old movie theater, it's his, and he has completely renovated it, and it looks like 1956 in there, except beautiful. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Traverse City seems to be a happening place. How did they survive? Because Michigan is kind of on and off depending as you drive through.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on here than you might notice when you first arrive. There's quite a number of high-tech groups going on. In fact, I've gone to some meetings monthly meetings before the pandemic of this high-tech kind of what you call it. They meet and they talk about the latest things that the local high-tech inventors have been doing. There's that, and there's some really precision companies like one company that makes super precision bearings, and now they're being used in wind turbines. So they're busy, because that's gone crazy. And some of the biggest printing companies in the United States, a couple of them are here in Traverse City. So they're a big insurance company that specializes in antique cars and boats. It's known all over the world. They're here. So there are things here.
Right.
It's just they don't stick out.
And I understand musicians, you've been collecting musicians in Traverse City.
Retired musicians?
Retired musicians are heading to Traverse City.
Yeah, well, we have, the Jerry Young, who's the guy that did the Arvin book.
Yep.
He actually moved. He's like 6 miles from me. He moved for.
Well, Jerry Young has quite a reputation in the in our world because he's been so involved with the. I still like to call it tubist Universal Brotherhood, but I know they changed it to ITEC, International, much less friendly ITEC. But at any rate, he's been very involved in the ITEC movement, and very well known as an educator as well as a performer.
Yeah.
I talked to him recently, and he was saying how nice it was, and also Ed Barr, a baritone player, and he was in the Eastman wind ensemble when I was there, and he was talking about the fact that he probably hasn't. I know he's hanging out with Jerry, and Jerry's going to introduce him to you. I know that's one of the things we talked about is that.
Yeah, I don't think that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
I know the name, but I don't think I've met it.
Yeah, and you're also close to Interlochen. Do you ever go down there and do any? They probably know you as a businessman, not a tuba player.
So, yeah, probably 60-40 or maybe 70-30 now. Yeah, I get down there every once in a while.
Yeah.
Of course, there's nothing going on down there
Right.
now.
Yeah.
But yes, I do, and both as speaking to the students and giving a class or whatever,
Sure.
and then also dealing with the music sales down there too. Where that's changed also, I understand, but
Okay.
That's a remarkable place. I don't know when the last time you were there. When were you there last?
Just not so long ago, Caleb Hudson, our trumpet player, is a graduate of the Arts Academy High School.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, I think we've been there twice now since he joined the group. So that's within the last 6 years, 7 years.
Well, you've seen a lot of the remarkable changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the remarkable changes was not too pleasing to people like me. That beautiful Kresge outdoor venue. We were there, I think, 11 or 12 years in a row, every summer.
Yeah.
And you could get, once you put people on the lawn, you could get up to 5,000, 6,000 people.
Yeah.
And then one year they must have had a meeting and they said, we could make some money here if we opened this up to like a shed. They call them sheds for pop groups, meaning every night, 7 nights a week, they were running shows that had nothing to do with Interlochen anymore. It was just a venue. So
yes, that's right.
So people got, you're not going to show up 7 nights a week. And I think the last time we played there, we didn't have the usual 6,000 or 7,000. I think it was more like just the inside, which I think is 3,000?
Something like that, if that, yeah.
Big disappointment. Only 3,000 people. I mean, you can't imagine how disappointed we were.
So let me do the math there.
But it did. It changed the nature of the venue dramatically, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did change. They made a lot of changes, getting, doing more pops concerts, rock concerts, country concerts, and trying.
Right.
It's an economic thing, I think. And
Sure.
It's maybe not what they want to do, but maybe what they have to do.
Sure.
Yeah. Wes, there's a comment in the chat that I wanted to ask you about. So Ryan Scott says, Wes, I heard a story about you once in a rock band, and Roger Bobo advised you to follow your heart, which meant leaving the rock band. Is that correct? What's the long story if that's partially correct? Do you recognize this story? And then actually somebody said that, no, that was Gene Picorni who told you that. So we need to settle a score here.
that Roger Bobo told me to follow my heart and leave the rock band. Yeah, I think he did. I don't know if those were his words, but and it wasn't really a rock band. I think he was talking about the Carpenters.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And so in fact, I guess in a way I did follow his advice, because it's always better to follow your heart, especially in music. You have to. And that was one piece of advice. The other piece of advice that Roger gave me was that I was an incredibly hardworking, hard practicing musician. My body required it. Some people don't, some people do. And I had to have a lot of maintenance. And so I practiced just a really insane amount of hours. And he told me I should actually put the horn down and go sit on top of a mountain for a week.
That's funny. Do you feel like, I'm curious, do you feel like, being a bass player and a tuba player, do you feel like that enhanced your tuba playing at all? Like, are you happy that you had that supplement to your music making?
I don't think playing the bass enhanced my tuba playing, or vice versa. When I was in high school, when this started, it was not uncommon to see bass players also play tuba in the popular music. But that was going out. That was ending. That era was moving on. And but I did that. And I always, even from the beginning, liked playing the tuba more. And most of those people were bass players that on the side played the tuba, and I was the reverse. I was the flip side of that.
Right. Do you actually own a bass anymore? Do you own a bass?
No.
Now you mention it, that over the years, like Toby Hanks, I remember when he left Eastman, I didn't know Toby yet, but I'd heard about him. I knew all about him. And he'd left his bass in the storage room. So guys would take it out and play weekend dates on his bass without mentioning it to Toby. I think that he should have been renting that out at the time. And I also remember Arnold Jacobs, another Jacobs. Arnold had a bass standing in the corner of his studio.
He did?
Yeah, and I was always curious if that was his or Toby's. I don't.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I was only there twice, I think.
Oh, okay. And then Dixon Van Winkle, who's another graduate of the Interlochen Arts Academy, and we were in school together. He was there as a tuba player, but he would supplement his earnings by he was out every weekend playing bass.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I to some extent I did that, and I also tuned pianos for quite a while.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which is that's a mixed bag. It's good for the ear to a point, and then if you do it too much, it's bad for your ear because of the noise that you're subjected to all the time. But I put food on the table while I was in college with a mixture of playing gigs on bass and tuning pianos, and it was okay.
That's interesting. I wanted to maybe ask you a little more about that because I've been doing a couple classes for like high school students and university students. A lot of people are asking me about the side hustles that I do. So for example, I'm a yoga teacher and I design websites on the side and just like things that sort of keep me entertained when I'm not playing with orchestras. And I'm just wondering if, besides putting food on the table, like you said, do you think there's any kind of value for musicians to pursue sort of side hustles and to enhance kind of like when they do get back on the instrument, they're really excited to do so?
I think it depends on what you're pursuing on the side. Yeah, I think it can be helpful. I think tuning pianos helped me understand intonation and helped me play better in tune. Maybe.
Pedal Cs and C sharps.
Yeah. Once I got those sorted out, which it happened instantly that I got that sorted out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having other interests is important. Yeah. I probably could have benefited from having more, especially early on, during the years when I just was locking myself in the practice room.
Well, challenging the stock market probably didn't hurt. We made it possible to lock yourself in the practice room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you also talk about studying with these greats, Tommy Johnson, Roger Bobo, Arnold Jacobs, and I'm just wondering, what did you? It's interesting for me to hear that because as a young player, there are times in tuba history that I would just love to just teleport back to and be a fly on the wall for a lesson with Bobo or Johnson or all these people. I'm wondering what you gleaned from all these people, and if you could sort of like talk about what various players taught you the most.
Well, I did most of my studying with Tommy Johnson, and Tommy was an amazing musician. He was amazing, and I've met other amazing musicians in my life, but Tommy had a way of just being able to take a Bordoni etude and just make you love it. And his lower register was still among the best that I've ever encountered, and he helped me a lot, with lower register stuff, and hence the pedal C at Julliard. I think that Tommy had a universe of interest, like in sports and other things that I didn't have, and I didn't pick that up right away. His interest in other areas and his ability to be flexible and do different things. But later, looking back on it, I could see the man was incredible. He unlike me at that time when I was deadly focused on one thing. Now he could do anything on the tuba. He would go to recording sessions and they would want him to sound bad. They'd play with burbles, play like you're drunk or something. And he could do it. He could do it right off, no problem. And I couldn't do that. If they asked me to play with burbles, that's what I tried to get out of my playing. I couldn't do it, you know. But Tommy could turn it on and off. He could do any of that stuff.
Well, that was an amazing time actually to grow up in Los Angeles. Following your, you know, if you map it out here, San Francisco, that was a nice time to be there because they were just emerging.
Yeah.
And Julliard hitting and running probably was, you know, you probably got the environment, and you get to see New York, and you didn't have to stay 10 years, 20 years. And then, you know, gravitating to an absolute major symphony. But Tommy and Roger Bobo, that era, and of course, I heard a lot about that because of Ronnie Rom growing up there. And Les Remsen, you mentioned with the brass group. It was an amazing, I guess it was because of Hollywood. I mean, there was things to do. There was jingles to play and movies to play, and you had a real resource of musicians.
Actually, yeah, that's true. I mean, you had Tommy Johnson and Roger Bobo in the same town. First of all, that's amazing.
Right.
Where are you going to find that? And the trombone players in Los Angeles at that time were astounding. There were like 20 at least great trombone players in that city, and it was a remarkable time.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to do film dates, or did you leave too soon? Did you get to do some of these?
I did some. Yeah. I did some, but as you know, Tommy was the king.
Sure.
And that's the reality. So what I did some movie soundtracks. I did some jingles. I did some sidelining on camera and stuff like that.
Right.
But it was clear that no matter what I did or how great a tuba player I became, I would still be getting the leftovers.
Right. Sure.
And rightfully so. So
sure.
That's the way it was. But actually, you can see me in, if you look carefully. There was a movie called Hello, Dolly with Barbara Streisand. Yeah. And they had this
minor movie.
Yeah, minor movie. Yeah. And they had this parade scene. And it was gigantic. It was a gigantic production. There was something like 4,000 people in it. It took 2 weeks of filming to film 8 minutes of parade. Well, when I decided that, I said, this movie is going to be epic, and I want to be seen. So I was in a marching band in the parade, and I took a silver sousaphone. Nobody has a silver sousaphone. Not the other 7 people that were playing sousaphone in there, but I had a silver sousaphone, So they wanted to fire me on the first day. They wanted to get me out, but they needed 8 players. So the guy told me, he says, you have to be here every single day. You can't miss because you stick out.
Oh, right.
Continuity. So in fact, I did get away with it. And if you look carefully in the parade scene, you'll see me with that silver sousaphone.
Okay, that's a must watch tonight. I'm going to definitely ferret that out. That's interesting. Arnold Jacobs, when he was a kid in Los Angeles, apparently got a film date too, right?
Yeah, I don't know about it. Actually. Yeah,
apparently he had a small part in some film.
Really?
Maybe there's something to that. If you don't get Jarrett, that's the message. You got to get a film appearance.
Silver sousaphone.
You're not going anywhere.
That's smart. You can know. Wow.
Yeah, it almost got me kicked out completely. But
Okay, now were you involved with this? Is this just an urban tale that somebody looked in the union book and took all the tuba players in the Los Angeles book and called them up individually and hired them for a date on a Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, Hollywood and Vine, 10 a.m., Hollywood and Vine, and 40 tuba players showed up on a Saturday morning? Were you involved in that?
I think that's a legend.
Oh, okay.
You know why I think that's a legend? Because when I heard the story, it was in New York City.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought so. So there you go.
But it could be worth a try.
It's definitely worth a try. So now, looking back on your career, you had a lot of really fine colleagues in Detroit, and we played with you guys a couple times, and we did some doubles, and it was stellar.
Yeah,
stellar time, huh?
Yeah, great brass section, great orchestra, really.
Yeah.
It always has been, and the well, the whole brass section has always been great. The French horns have been amazing and continue to
The
be.
principal horn, Gene Wade. Remember Gene?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Gene Wade, there was a time at Eastman, he'd come back for a summer course, I believe, and we played brass quintets together. And to this day, Gene Wade denies it. A marvelous horn player. He did one of the, they used to have an arranger's workshop band every summer with Ray Wright, who was Radio City Music Hall. He'd come to Rochester and put an orchestra together. And somebody did an arrangement of Sometimes My Love. Mm-hmm. And they put Gene on a bass stool out in front of the orchestra and put a light on him. And to this day, it's the most gorgeous horn solo and playing I've ever heard in my life. It was really that register where you're just pushing the edges of the horn out. Yeah. So it's not low horn and it's not high where you say, oh, isn't that great, he's playing high. It was the perfect upper register and it just tore your heart out.
Yeah.
And then to watch his career, there he was, principal horn in a major orchestra, and he just played this beautiful. He could have made a recording. He would have beat Barry Tuckwell by about 20 years on that kind of a crossover album.
The horn section when I joined the symphony was, of course, it was different players, obviously, in 1970, and it again was a fabulous horn section. It would send chills up my spine when I heard them play, and they were. A lot of them were younger guys, and they were kind of wild. They sometimes went across the line a little bit. Right. And there was we had six horns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then assistant first and assistant third. And Erling, the music director, was conducting one morning. He came to rehearsal, and well, I'll preface it and tell you what happened. The horn players were all out at a bar the evening before, and the bar stayed open past the legal time to stay open. So it was an after hours bar, and the police raided it, and one of the horn players got arrested. So Erling is, now it's Tuesday morning or Monday morning, whatever, and this rehearsal, and Erling is up there, and of course, like all classic conductors, he first looks out to check to see if all the forces are there, and he looks at the horns, and there's only 5. He looks in, and he says, he said, well, where's Mr. Sobe? And somebody said, oh, he's in jail. And Erling said, oh, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Was Fergus McWilliam there when you were there?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Great player.
Now, my first job in life was teaching at the University of Toronto, and Fergus was there at the time, and I had a big brass ensemble. So I've always claimed Fergus as one of my students. And
great.
He followed Gene Wade. He denies it. I don't know. I just don't have much luck with horn players.
You're not really doing too well there. Fergus, then he left Detroit and went to Berlin.
Berlin, yeah. He just retired there. Yeah.
Great player.
Yeah.
You did quite a bit of recording with Detroit too. I'm thinking about, I performed Barber for a symphony a couple years ago, and there's a recording that you did, I think, with Pavel Jarvi. Is that right?
With Neeme Jarvi.
Neeme Jarvi, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of recording with Neeme. Most of the recording was with Neeme, in fact. He just loved to record.
Okay.
And I think we did something like 53 albums or something.
Wow.
Oh, goodness.
The one in particular that's good is the Copland Third Symphony. That's a great recording.
Cool.
Nice.
If you haven't heard that one, that might be one to go on Spotify or something, pick up.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. That just seems like, it makes me so sad that orchestras don't really do that level of recording anymore. I mean, especially, maybe like the top 5 orchestras would do that, but it would be just so cool to hear some of these orchestras. For example, like I miss hearing the Detroit Symphony, and Dennis Nolte I've taken a couple lessons with. He sounds wonderful. It would be really cool to have kind of like more available sort of snapshots of these orchestras that you don't really hear very often anymore.
Yeah. I couldn't hear the last thing you said.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that it just seems like I wish I could hear more of certain orchestras, but I feel like the only orchestras that are doing a lot of recording are, Chicago, New York Phil, LA, for example. Yeah, they're not doing 50 a year anymore.
When recording moved to digital, then everything had to be recorded again.
Yeah.
So that made 20, maybe 15 years of big recording work.
Well, you have the same problem in the U.S. that we've had here in Canada, which is, up here we could hear all the symphonies in Canada one night or another. You'd hear Toronto Symphony on a Wednesday night, and you'd hear Vancouver on another night, and so forth. And public broadcasting had orchestras all the time, so you could stay abreast of what was going on. That's all gone.
Yeah.
The radio stations kind of threw up their hands and said, "Well, what do we do for listenership? Do we go pop or whatever?" I'm not sure they ever found the answer. But in the meantime of not finding the answer, they threw away really a remarkable heritage.
Yes.
That we had.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's things change. I don't know. Maybe they'll change back. But change is part of life.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
So right now, you're talking about, are you pretty busy with Encore? Like, what does your role sort of day to day look like with the publishing company?
It varies. It depends on whether we're working on new material, new books. We mostly publish books now, really. Mm-hmm. And if we have a project going, I'm busy. I'm editing. I'm working in the actual development of the printing of the book, and then there are times like now, for instance, where I'm kind of between projects.
We don't have a lot of time, and I hate to pin you down on this because it does probably have legal things. But were you ever accused of nepotism? And didn't you have half the band of Detroit was Jacobs? He
used to introduce me. Jake used to introduce me as his son a couple of times, and then he started laughing.
But your wife played in the orchestra. Your daughter,
yes,
major.
My Debbie played cello in the orchestra for 27 years or something, 30 years. And my daughter was hired in the first violin section at the year that I retired, 2008, but she'd already been playing for a couple of years as a sub, as extra. And my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, is the general manager of the symphony now.
Oh, wow!
He worked his way up from he started in the library, working in the library, Perfect. And he went right up to the top.
Perfect.
Took a while, and he pulled it off.
Nice. Sounds like his father-in-law, who was doing business at the same time. Very, very interesting. Wes, you're a remarkable guy, and I loved the fact some of the things that I've heard that you were doing in your own community. You just seem to have a wonderful sense of sharing and really involving people in things, and it was wonderful to watch. I've followed your career. And it's marvelous. Really marvelous.
Well, thank you very much. I've always been in awe of what you've done, and it doesn't even need to be talked about because everybody knows it. But it's we're doing well, you and I. I see like me, you're dyeing your hair gray.
Absolutely, and I'm selling mouthpieces. I don't know if you noticed.
I was going to ask
I thought it was your ears or something.
No, it's just I'm in a different location. I had no background at all, so that was the best I could do. But
you're a showman. You always got to put on a show, Chuck.
I love it.
So, Jarrett, what did you learn today?
It's so cool. I mean, it seems like you've just had a career, unprecedented career, and it seems like you've worked so hard for the things you've had, and the recordings that I've heard you live, it's so cool to actually get a chance to talk to you, and it's so cool to see how successful you've been. It gives me a lot of hope, and I'm sure it gives people a lot of hope as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Great, Wes. Thanks so much for joining us. This was fun.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor.
Great.
Cheers.
Okay.